Hail, Internet! It's Paul. It's Matt. Today, the Dork Lords are talking about the Sandman Netflix series, featuring 11 episodes based on the Sandman comic series by Neil Gaiman. The Netflix series actually had Gaiman as a developer. And we're going to cover the entire series in one video, mainly because all the episodes dropped at once. Well, 10 of them did, and then an 11th surprise one dropped. And because we get this wealth of Dork Lords worthy shows airing at the moment. So we thought this was worthy to cover. We're covering it, but it's kind of a, we're going to cover 11 hours of television in one go. But I'll say up front, if you're watching this video wondering, should I watch the Sandman series? The answer is yes. It's a fantastic adaptation. In fact, I've heard some folks think it's too close to the original material, but that it didn't separate itself enough. But if the original source is awesome, that seems like a compliment, frankly. But anyway, so yes, it is a faithful adaptation, and it's very, very good. Before I go on anymore, Paul,
yes?
What are your general thoughts on the Sandman series?
I enjoyed it. I've certainly heard a lot about Sandman over the years. It did not compel me to go out and seek it out. The first, I'd seen his work on Doctor Who, and and I came into The Omen, and I watched the American
Good Omens, right?
Good Omens, yes, and what is it, American Gods?
American Gods.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that. So I can definitely see his his voice in this. And you said I can't remember the phrase you used, but he was the showrunner of this, essentially the person.
I said
who was
developer, but okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So he had a big hand in it. He wasn't just like guy who nodded his head and said, "Go ahead."
Yeah, no. He was essentially, because he had developed, he had experience with television through Good Omens, and he was like, you know what, I think I could do it. So, and
that's how I came onto Neil Gaiman, was through Good Omens. I was a big Terry Pratchett fan.
Oh, that's right.
Terry Pratchett did he wrote Good Omens with Neil Gaiman, and so then I started like, oh, Neil Gaiman might be cool, and that's where I again got into the Sandman from there. But
so Sandman was next, and then American Gods for you.
Correct. And actually, even between Good Omens and Sandman, I read a bunch of his anthologies. So he has like a lot of short stories. He does short story anthologies, and I'll talk about a little bit later, like some of those works that kind of echo themes we see in Sandman. But
I think you go as far as to say that short stories is how this is really composed at. I thought it was interesting that Neil Gaiman, when he was asked about this series, it was like the first comic series that he wrote, and he wasn't sure if he could do one. He was thinking about how many episodes before it's canceled. But he was like, can I do a book a month, basically, which is what you do in comics. And but he decided that he could, and I think part of the reason why he decided that he could is that part of the way that Sandman is constructed is that it doesn't necessarily, the stories aren't sort of structured in the same way as you might have expected a comic book. There's a number of these episodes that we see, and they're based on the comics, where it's almost like you wouldn't have to watch the other episodes to jump into this point and see. It's like, obviously the 11th is the strongest of that. But, I feel if you came in on the episode where they talked about death, you wouldn't have necessarily needed to see that stuff they were talking about before. It's like, oh, I was captured or whatever. But most of it is just about the experience that when he's with his sister. Also, too, is battle with the devil. What is it? Lucifer, yes. You didn't necessarily need to see him locked up in a basement before he went to go get, his mask. So
yeah, maybe it's in some ways this issue kind of came up with Star Trek Strange New Worlds, where it's episodic, but it does have an overall character narrative. And so, it's similar to here, we see this character narrative of Sandman. He's growing. He's actually changing over time. But we're seeing it in an episodic way that you can kind of mix and match. And the nature of dreams is, they can be out of sequence. So you can kind of mix and match these things and appreciate them.
One interesting thing is in terms about how he changed. It's interesting. I feel like we didn't get too much of a sense of him in the ways that some of the people spoke of him.
Right. There are a couple of
instance,
comics, in fact, that they didn't include that show him as a kind of a more like revenge kind of a I will punish you for betraying. So anyway, that's for later if they get that.
Yeah, okay. I would think, because what was it in that his wife
Calliope. You're talking Calliope when they had Orpheus.
Yes. Yeah. So he's like, "Can you forgive me?" Whatever, and you're sort of like, what did you do? It's clear that he's helping you,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, how much?
Although I guess it's like it's like, but then we did see that woman down there. He was like, sorry, I can't help you. You can't. You can help Calliope, but you can't help this chick.
Yeah, right. Obviously, the story of Orpheus is very tragic, and so there's that bit there where she says, maybe we can eventually mourn or grieve for our son as we should, or something like that. So that's kind of like that's the unspoken thing, like they can't talk because they have this thing they can't get past, which is the death of their kid.
So I hope they show us more in the following seasons so we can get a better sense of how he was, because even Lucian, when she gets a little PO'd at the Sandman at Dream, where it's like, oh, well, he doesn't want my help. Oh, it was like,
right. Right. You get this implication that before he was imprisoned, maybe he wasn't the best guy. Like, he was maybe detached. I feel like we see more humanity in him as a result of his capture and then subsequent, quest to get his items back. His helm, his ruby, his sand, and interacting with humanity on that level makes him less of like almost like I'm a machine that does dreams kind of thing. So I think most of the differences, if I would say from the source material, really come down to the fact that they had to remove like DC character references. So there were some DC characters that were in the show, like John Constantine. He's one of the characters. So they replaced that with Joanna Constantine. They had David Thewlis's character John was the supervillain Dr. Destiny. So anyway, there were things like that where they, and I feel like this show is better for like removing itself from like the superhero genre. So I think anyway, I think it was to good effect actually to kind of DC it and just leave it on like, hey, we've got the Endless in this particular universe. We've got the Endless who are what is it? Dream, despair, desire, death.
To me,
delirium.
I would have seen. I now knowing that because I didn't know that. I would say it's just another missed opportunity for DC.
Right? No, it's true.
It's like this is a really strong story, and if you'd kept those references alive and decided to say, you know what, when we do use those characters, let's make sure we cast them well, and then we can spin them off. So it's just another missed opportunity. They should have been working. Warner Brothers should have really came to Neil Gaiman and said, "Hey, what can we do to make this happen?"
And I will say that season 2 seems to be at least somewhat in doubt, even though this series is very popular on Netflix. Neil Gaiman had a tweet basically where he said somebody had asked him like, "Hey, what's the deal with season 2?" And he's like, "Well, this show cost a lot to make, and we'll need to be very popular on Netflix if they were going to ask us back for season 2." The implication being we aren't there yet. In other words, like maybe there is no season 2. So we'll see.
Well, we'll see. Yes, it's possible. Yeah, I mean, I feel as if it's getting enough buzz that
Right.
Netflix would be stupid not to.
Or somebody else. You mentioned Warner Brothers. Maybe somebody comes in
That's
and is
true.
like,
That's
come
true.
over
That's
here,
really
you know?
what should be happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
'cause it
that
is a
maybe
good
that's
show.
also happening where it's sort of like there's some fighting going on or whatever. Like, well, how much are you going to pay or whatever.
So, if you were to go to a season 2, obviously they set up a plot line, which is from the comics. It's Lucifer, getting vengeance, where she's, plotting her revenge right there at the end of episode 10. That volume is called Season of the Mists, I believe, which is one of the more popular volumes. And then also there's a reference to the missing endless, right? They're like, the prodigal. Who's the prodigal?
Yes.
There's the,
Yes.
and that, spoilers, whatever. But it's the endless known as destruction. So destruction has disappeared, and there's a whole storyline behind that as well, and it's pretty cool. So if they were to go with season 2, I think we'd learn more about those 2 plot lines going forward. I'll say this. So I just watched episode 11 last night before we recorded this, which I enjoyed very much. But they should have had a trigger warning, which is also actually trigger warning is the name of one of Neil Gaiman's books. But they're saying no animated kittens were harmed in the making of this production. It was like, of all the things that happen in this show, it's like, murders and torture and demons and all these insanity, blah 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 blah. They killed a bunch of animated kittens, Paul.
That's
you can't
right.
do
That's
that.
right, they did. Yeah.
Crossing the line. Oh my God! I was like, "What? Oh God! Oh no!"
Do you have trouble watching Tom and Jerry? I mean,
I do, Paul. No, anyway. No, it was just like, wow. Thank God it's animated. Where are those cats? But yeah. Anyway, so it was really the use of animation there was really cool. It reminded me of one of Neil Gaiman's book. He's done a couple of books where they're like a graphic novel essentially. It's an animated or there's drawings that go with the pages. And there's Stardust is one of them, and there's one called The Dream Hunters. And Dream Hunters is like a Japanese folktale that is retold by Neil Gaiman, and there are animals in it as well. There's like a fox and a badger, blah blah blah. But it's Dream has you would shock in a story called Dream Hunters. Dream Morpheus is in it anyway, but there was a little bit of that in there too. So it's interesting that in Neil Gaiman's kind of expanded universe, he doesn't. It's not like every story connects to everything else, but he does bring some of these characters into unrelated stories of his. Another example of that would be one of my favorite short stories of his. It's called Murder Mysteries. And forever I was like, God, if I was ever going to direct a play, it would be some kind of adaptation of this story. I think it would be really, really cool. So I could imagine it could find its way into some kind of visual medium. But essentially, it's like one of the plot lines in it is it's the very first murder in heaven. And so it's Lucifer before the fall.
Right.
Basically being influenced by what's happened here and seeing he's not the murderer, but he's like, what's going on? And anyway, and so it's really fascinating. But so we see a good look at Lucifer in that. And there's also a fallen angel who's one of the people that followed Lucifer, and he's the main character in it. Anyway, it's really interesting. But so we see more Lucifer basically played out in stories that are not related to Sandman particularly. Yeah, I mean, my favorite scene, I think, was the Wizards Duel, as we've already brought it up. But like, in the comic, it's not necessarily Lucifer; it's one of the demons versus Dream. But so be it; it's the same idea. And I thought it was played out really, really well. The fact that they are, they're pulling off the Merlin versus Mad Madam Mim from Sword in the Stone. A really cool Wizards Duel. I just like that. And we may.
Didn't Tolkien also do some sort of duel between
Paul,
wizards?
you are so brilliant in your Tolkien lore. I might have mentioned this to him earlier. But yeah,
Or
in
not.
fact, I'll say that there's a chance. I'd say not a probability, but a possibility that if Amazon has the rights to it, which is questionable, we might see a version of Sauron versus Finrod, a really cool Wizards Duel that Tolkien wrote about in the Silmarillion. We might see a flashback to it. I think that's probably the closest we'll get. But we'll talk about that. If that comes about in Rings of Power, we'll bring it around to compare it to this moment. Because this duel is actually really, really cool. And I thought it was really well done. And, of course, it ends with hope. Hope is what beats Lucifer. Can't come up with, like, hopelessness. Hey, I win! No, but anyway, it was.
Yeah, I wondered if what they were really trying to say was Lucifer didn't want to defeat Hope.
Yeah, good point. Because there's this hope of maybe returning to heaven, perhaps.
Yes,
being forgiven.
Yeah. It's like, wait, whoa! Don't ruin everything for these people down here who aren't going to ever leave. At least let them keep their hope.
That's right. Or maybe it's like,
don't take all the fun out of me torturing them.
Hope keeps them here. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, did you have a favorite scene in particular from this series? I know there's a lot to take in. You get some recency bias sometimes, but yeah, what's a scene in particular?
No, I liked Dream and his friendship with the man who decided that he never wanted to die.
Hob. Yeah, that's a really cool thing. Every 100 years they're going to meet.
Yeah,
you get the sense that like Dream is trying to basically prove to himself like this guy will get tired of living. That's what's going to happen. If something bad's going to happen, and he's going to be like, "Kill me, please." And so, but no, like, oh wow, I really find.
Yeah, and I'm glad that wasn't the lesson of it. I really am. I think it's like they had a point where he was sort of like, "Wow, it's really bad now."
Yep.
Okay, is he going to want to be dead? And he's like, "No."
Hope. In fact, it's a great point. Hope is actually at the center of a lot of this, right? So Hope was at the Wizards Duel. Hope, in some ways, is that in that story too. And then in maybe my favorite episode. The retelling of the comic 24/7, so the diner episode. In some ways, Hope is at the center of that one too, right? It's like taking away people's dreams. It's their aspirations, the way that they can cope with day-to-day life. It's like, well, yeah, but I've got this aspiration for something better, and if you take that away, and people just feel this desperation of their immediate circumstance. Bad things happen. So yeah, interesting. Maybe at the center of Dream is Hope. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I quite liked Death. I think Death was well cast.
That was really well played out too. So we have, in the middle of the season, it seems like Dream has accomplished everything. Hey, I got free. I got all my stuff back. I'm fixing the realm. And what we see is he's like, yeah, I've got everything. I may be actually more powerful than ever, but I feel really empty inside. And so he, goes with his sister, essentially, Death, on her daily rounds, and is kind of inspired again to go back to doing his job. And the depiction of Death is really, really cool. It's not, it's not the, the Grim Reaper, right? It's not the... So the Corinthian is kind of your main villain in season 1. He is less of a central character in the comics. I'll say he's kind of got his own. He's dedicated to like a particular volume kind of thing, as opposed to like the entire thing. But I thought he was played as the villain to good effect here. So he's a stray nightmare. The whole serial convention that's also played as a major horror thing in the comics. It's almost played a little more for laughs here, but again, I think to good effect. It's creepy.
Yeah.
It's like really creepy in this thing, where it's like all these serial killers, and they kind of like have their own little idiosyncrasies, but they're not. Yeah, they're evil and terrible people, but they're also like. Yeah, they're not evil 100% of the time. Some part of their day, they're just, whatever, signing books or whatever.
Yeah, I think they struck the right tone in between the horror of what these people did and their attitude about doing it. So it's like you knew that these people were killers, and even as Funland, even when he was pursuing the kids, and it's like, oh no, something bad's gonna happen, and he's gonna do bad, I think he was still menacing enough, even as you saw him earnestly trying to get their attention and like them. But it was clear that the show pictured them as bad, but I don't think they had to go. They were making a point of it, of really showing them being necessarily all the time being evil. It's like this one time I just want to talk or whatever. I just want to get to that point, and then I'll be evil.
Right. I mean, they did. They set you up with they all went and got eyeballs to try to mimic Corinthian, so they could bring Corinthian in. And so that's their see, we kill people.
Yeah.
And then from then on,
and it was interesting to me too that he was instead of just killing them instantly, was like, okay, yeah, I'll come to your convention.
Right. Well, it's also it's a pretty fun, as I say, creepy, but fun obstacle to our hero. So in this case, we've got the vortex, the dream vortex, and her young brother are the only non-serial killers in a building filled with serial killers, which is pretty. That's an interesting oh god, at any moment anyone could just decide to kill you basically. So that was it's dangerous. You feel the danger at any moment. Especially because, for as much as the Corinthians talking about Jed, the brother's he's with me, but he's kind of casual about it. You just stay in the room. I'm gonna go over here. And so there's I'll just wander around this convention of serial killers. Maybe watch the guy. Couldn't you at least be a responsible serial killing nightmare? So there's some tension there.
It was it was in a way surprised how that situation didn't go more out of control. When Rose finally decided to sacrifice herself because other people were hurting, it's okay, good. She's clear, oh, my family is being hurt, so okay, fine, you can kill me because I can see the bad things are happening now. And then it allowed Unity to say, oh no, let it be me.
So it kind of let her off the hook, in other words, what you're saying? Or?
Well, no, it just resolved itself. She's okay, I'm happy to do this for my family. I'm happy to do this so that they can live. It's I thought it was why are we accepting this as the answer? It's couldn't we work a little harder to see maybe nobody had to die? Right. It's no, that's the only vortexes die. That's what happens.
even to the effect of in that moment, I mean, so Unity shows up. Is hey, let me take your place, basically.
Yeah.
And so Rose is okay, and inside I'm you realize she's saying, I'm gonna die now.
Yes.
And I almost got the sense of Rose didn't realize the stakes. It's oh, well, if you do it, you mean it's fine? Okay, well, sure. Then turns, oh my God, what just happened? Oh God, I killed my great grandmother.
But really, she didn't know it for long.
No.
So.
Yeah, right. She's a great grandmother. Come on. How long did she have?
And also, too, the other thing that is left dangling, and I assume in the subsequent seasons they would show it, is the whole I'll come back for your kid, at a certain point. Right. It's like Rumpelstiltskin or something.
Yeah. And you've got and she being Rose is now also a child of the Endless.
Yeah.
She has that powers. But you're right. So Lyda had a child in the dream world, and so obviously that kid and it's funny the way that it's played out, because Dream's of course I would come get the kid. What are you talking about? It's those are the rules. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it's creepy and weird that you do that. No, okay, no, that's great. The fact that I thought they did a good job at playing by the rules that are set in this dream world without explaining every single one of them before they do it. I thought that was well done as well. This universe, this world, this history, it has a history. It's got rules of conduct. When he's in hell, there's a certain rule of conduct, and he almost gets played by the protocols where it's like, oh yeah, I'll just have to beat your champion. No, that's fine. Oh, your champion is Lucifer. Oh, okay. All right. Oh crap. So yeah, that's a fun. It was well played out in that way. So no, there's a lot to like. I'd say one other theme that I saw played out in another book of Neil Gaiman's was in the Graveyard book.
Oh.
There's a character named Bod who can dream walk, dreams. But also, he's being pursued by a society called the Jacks of All Trades. And they're like these kind of cryptic group of assassins all named Jack. And they seem to have, kind of superhuman powers, whatever. But it kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Serial Convention. These are kind of bizarre little idiosyncratic characters, but they're evil, and they're in a society, and they meet and they have meetings, and they're like, hey, Jack, but then they're also like, and now I will go kill this child. So there seemed to be a little. It reminded me of that in a way.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So yeah, I think those are the main points I had about this.
Show. I think I hit everything I wanted to say.
Okay. So yeah, big recommendation. We can't get around to everything, but it is interesting how in this last year, I put this on par with Severance. I put this on par with Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, and now Sandman. I mean, these are we got some really cool series that are coming around. Yeah. So kudos. As much as it's easy to say like, oh, it's a wasteland, blah 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 blah. There are some quality shows out there. So there's some fun content. So thumbs up to Sandman for sure. All right. Well, cool. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Oh,
good
you're
sir.
welcome.
We'll be back talking about House of the Dragon. We're going to be talking about Rings of Power.
Yeah.
And we're talking about She-Hulk. So come on back for that, everybody. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.